Hey Wimbies, just a little note to let you know that we had some trouble with the video recording this time around, so you might notice some pixelation on Nikki's video feed. So sorry about that, but I hope you'll still enjoy the video anyways.
Welcome. We are here today to talk about the cooperation curse and the take charge tax. So what do I mean by that? You're going to find out really soon. But first, who is this woman that is talking to us that has described herself as an excited geek to be here tonight? So I worked in information technology and application development for over 20 years, close to 25. So really familiar with working in a male-dominated industry and some of the challenges that we face there, and also have a passion for helping other women figure out that landscape. And so that's part of, and I didn't update this slide. I'm actually on, and I'm super proud of this. This is how much of a geek I am. I'm actually on a 171-day Wordle streak right now. Every morning, that's part of my routine is to get up and do the Wordle. So that probably tells you an awful lot about me. So I am excited to be here, and we are going to jump into this content. I'm going to start with understanding our natural tendencies. So as a coach, I spend a lot of time helping people understand what these natural patterns are, what their natural tendencies are. And you're probably aware of some of them, but you may not have a language to really wrap around what is it. Like, what does intimidating mean? Well, what are the behaviors that lead people to think that about me? Or what does be more assertive mean in this context when I've watched other women be assertive and get punished for it? So what exactly is that supposed to mean here? So what I want to do is break down what some of these patterns are in terms of how I think about behavioral patterns, so that we have a common language to start with, and then we'll do a real deep dive into take charge and cooperative. So these natural behavior traits, and this comes from a tool that I use called the Natural Behavior Discovery from DNA Behavior. But essentially, you want to think about this as these are your core natural preferences. They get wired into our personalities when we are very young, like between 3 and 6 years old. So they're very ingrained patterns. They are our natural patterns, but they don't account for any learned behavior that we may have. And there's no good or bad of these patterns. And you can certainly choose to behave in a way that is not your natural pattern. But you want to think of this as kind of a spectrum. So people high outgoing, for instance, are going to be very communicative and very expressive and tend to like to be around other people and get energy that way, where people high reserved are going to be more serious, usually more quiet, usually kind of recharge on their own. When we're looking at patient, people high patient tend to be very relational. They tend to be very approachable and accepting and empathetic, and really focused on relationship and maintaining and building relationship, where people high fast paced tend to be very rational, be very task focused, be very bottom line results oriented. So they tend to be more results focused than relational. People high planned tend to be very accurate in detail. They tend to appreciate schedules. They tend to appreciate a lot of detail. And then people high spontaneous tend to be more generalists. They kind of speak in generalities and think in generalities. They tend to improvise a lot more. They don't tend to love to follow plans. I'm going to skip over take charge and cooperative because that's where we're going to spend the rest of the evening. So you'll hear more about that. People high trusting tend to take things at face value more. They tend to have an easier time sharing information. I like to say you kind of start with trust with those folks and you can lose it over time. Where people high skeptical really like to have the information for themselves. They like to keep control of information. They ask really difficult questions. They approach things with a bit of skepticism, are very exacting about getting things right. With pioneering, people high pioneering are like to start new things and then drive to get those things done. That is, like, if we have a goal, we're going to drive to get that goal. They tend to be somewhat competitive. They tend to be very determined to get things to happen. Where people high content tend to like more of a steady balance. They tend to like to spread their time and energy out among different things. So they have a community bucket and the work bucket. So it's not all, they tend to do life balance a little bit better, or at least they appreciate it. They might not succeed in doing it better, but their pattern is that they'd rather have it, where high pioneers tend to drive really hard toward one. People that are high in risk taking tend to take bold action, and they tend to be more tolerant sort of when the coin is in the air and there's still a possibility and they don't really understand what the outcome might be. Where people high cautious tend to like to think through all of the contingencies and have a plan. So they'll take an action, but after they've really thought it through, and they tend to be happier when the coin lands. Even if it lands on the side that they weren't hoping, at least they know which side it landed on. So they can put their plan in play. And then with creative and anchored, so people high creative tend to be very original. They tend to start with they do things in a new way. If you give them a problem to solve, they're the start with a blank piece of paper people that just start solving the problem. Where people high anchored tend to be very practical, very experience based. So when you ask them to solve a problem, they go and look to see who's already solved this problem and what's the best way to solve the problem. So that's the jumping off point for me to solve it. Where people high creative, it may not occur to them to even look for a template until they're 90% through. And then have I done this before? Maybe I've done this before. So that I know was really quick, but the idea is to just give you some sense of all of these behavior traits play together, and they influence how people experience us, and they influence how we show up. There is also kind of a scale for these patterns and how these patterns show up. The closer your scores, when you take this discovery that I use, the closer your score is to 50, the easier it is for you to flex your behavioral trait. So if you say scored a 52 on outgoing, that means you tend toward outgoing, but it's pretty easy for you to be more reserved when you want to be. Or on the opposite side, if you scored a 48 in reserved, it's pretty easy for you to flex into being more outgoing. But the stronger your score, the harder it is to move to that other side. You can still do it. It just takes a lot more energy. It takes a lot more intention and effort to do it. And usually when you're doing that kind of flex, it's kind of exhausting. So if you're either working with somebody that's got a different trait and you just feel drained when you talk to somebody, they've probably got a trait that's opposite yours. Or when you're doing activity that's opposite to a strength of yours, particularly the further away that score goes from 50, the more energy it takes to try to do the other trait. What you're seeing here is a representation of my scores. So I tend to be a tad on the reserve side, but I can be more outgoing. That's a pretty easy flex for me. I tend to be kind of in the middle on fast-paced and patient, so that relational and rational task focused. I tend a little bit toward results focused, but kind of in the middle on that. I am way over on the spontaneous side. So all my high planned friends and project managers, they hate me because what they hear from me is that I change my mind all the time and that I refuse to follow a plan. We'll talk about where I am on take charge in a little bit. I'm kind of in the middle on skeptical and trusting. So it's very easy for me to dive in and be the one that's the skeptic in the room and sort of play devil's advocate, but I can also lean over and kind of take things at face value and be more trusting. I tend toward a little bit more of the content side than the pioneering side. I like to have a little bit more balance, a little bit of steadiness. I don't tend to drive super hard toward goals, but I do tend to be really high on that creative, meaning I will start with a blank piece of paper and then it will occur to me 90% through the project, I probably have already done something like this. This seems really familiar. Let me go and look and see and find that I've already created that document that we need right now. But today, what we're talking about is this one element, take charge and cooperative. And the reason that we picked this one to really highlight and focus on today is because this seems to be a power dynamic and a trait that gets us in trouble a lot in male-dominated industries, or confounds us a bit in male-dominated industries. I won't say it gets us in trouble, but it's one that confuses where we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do. So we're going to talk about this pattern that is somewhat hidden and nobody teaches us about high cooperation and high take charge. What's your natural pattern? I'm going to describe here a pattern and you can see if this sounds like you. So people that are high cooperative tend to prefer to follow agendas rather than set them. They tend to be really good at getting people to agree on things and seeking consensus. They tend to be fairly diplomatic about the way they say things. They tend to be really group oriented and very good at reading. Hey, is everybody following along? Is everybody getting this? They tend to be really great team players, and they tend to really appreciate harmony. So they don't like a lot of conflict, and they will do whatever they can to help maintain a sense of harmony in the group. So who feels like that might be where your natural pattern is? Can you just give me a that's me in the chat if this sounds like you might be on that more cooperative continuum? Who wishes they were on that side? Are there any I wishes out there? I wish I could be more like that. So people that are high take charge tend to like to have authority. They tend to like to make decisions. They tend to be very self-reliant. They're the just point me in the direction and let me go do it and stop trying to tell me how, just let me go. They also tend to be fairly direct about the way they say things. So when they have something to say, there's not a lot of sugarcoating of it. There's just a, this is it. This is what I'm thinking. This is what I'm feeling. This is my 2 cents. They like to have input in decisions and they like to have input in discussions. So they like to help make those decisions and or have some input into a decision if there is some sort of decision to be made. So who feels like they're maybe on that side of the spectrum? Yeah, I'm definitely on that side too. Anybody wish they could be on that side? Wish they were on that side? We're going to do this little exercise. If you want to just grab a little piece of paper and think about, just build this little chart for yourself. We'll start kind of filling it in and we'll start to see how this curse plays out and how the tax plays out. This chart will reflect me, since I'm an authority on me. This is you, and then do you think that you fall out more on that cooperative side or more on the take charge side? So for me, I've got to check on the take charge side because that's the side that I fall out on. And this chart will start talking about not just where your natural pattern is, but some other things as we continue along. So what is this cooperation curse she speaks of? Let's find out. So I'm going to tell you a story about my friend Robin. So Robin was like the office mom in this organization that we worked together in. She was loved by everybody. She always knew what special events were coming up for people. She always made sure that they felt special when something was coming up. She was really easy to get along with. She made sure that everybody was happy in the organization and that everybody was getting along well. She was really good at recognizing other people. She was really good about getting people excited about things together and making sure that everybody kind of was okay with the directions that we were going on things. And everybody loved her. To think about, can you think of somebody that's like that? Do you know somebody like that? She was really great. Everybody really liked her. So that doesn't sound like a curse. That sounds amazing, right? Everybody liked her. Here's the curse part though. Because she appreciated harmony so much, there were a few instances where part of what she was also very good at was planning. And so she had streamlined a process for, because this organization kept doing one-off things and it was taking a ton of time to support. So she had the group agree to certain standards, but there was somebody in the organization that didn't adhere to that. And she didn't want to make a scene and say, no, you can't do this one-off thing. So she just took on the extra work. This was hours and hours of work that she was doing that she wasn't getting credit for because nobody understood that this decision to not follow the new process was causing extra hours. So it was extra hours that she didn't get credit for. And it made her seem like she was slow at her other work. And nobody really understood what it was that was taking all of this time because she wasn't confronting the fact that these processes weren't being followed. So when a leadership position came up in a leadership meeting for her to really step into something and be a key player in this meeting, she was overlooked for that position because she wasn't seen as a leader. She wasn't seen as confident enough. She wasn't seen as somebody who would stand up to do what she needed to do. What makes matters worse, the person that they did put in charge of leading these meetings had none of the qualifications that she had for being really planned and doing the work of the meeting and doing the facilitation of the meeting. They actually picked somebody who probably should never have been put in charge of something like that, but was put in charge of it because Robin was seen as too nice, too much of a too accommodating to be in this leadership position in a meeting. So the curse was, everybody loves you, and that means we don't think you're going to make a very good leader. Does that sound familiar to any of you? Unfortunately. So let's talk then about the take charge curse. What happens on the other side of that? And now I'm going to tell you a story about me. So I was hired to work at an organization, and there was a project that was a bit stuck. So I went in and figured out what the problem was, diagnosed where the problem was, helped create a new process to get work moved between these two organizations. I set new boundaries with the teams, so we started getting better results. I streamlined the work and reduced everybody's frustration, reduced a bunch of rework on our side, and saved a bunch of money because we were having more direct communication and things were flowing better. So I was getting great results. I was getting great reviews. The customer team was happy. Our team was happy. I'm high-fiving myself thinking, fantastic, this is amazing. I'm doing amazing work. Everybody sees that I'm doing amazing work. Clearly, this is going to lead to amazing things for me. Wah, wah. So I say to my boss at the end of the year, hey, I've solved this problem. Like, what do I need to do to get promoted? I'm looking for the next opportunity. And his response was, yeah, I can't promote you. There's no spot open. So I said, okay. So I do another year of still solving problems and still getting great results and still doing all of the things. And I go back the next year and I say, you don't need to promote me. Like, I get it. There is no place for you to put me. Just give me a new problem to solve. And his answer was, I don't have a new problem for you to solve. Just go do the thing that you're doing. And then he took a male colleague and gave him a huge new project that I actually had a certification in being able to do. And this guy had no idea what this project was. Not only did I not get the opportunity, but I got told that they didn't even want my help with it. Like, I couldn't even volunteer to like help bring him up to speed on some things or give him some advice about it. So the third year that I went and pushed for, hey, I need something, my boss said, okay, well then you need to leave my team. If you want something other than what you're getting here, you're just going to have to leave my team. Because I was seen as a threat to him, because that directness, that amount of take charge, that kind of result, all he could see was, she wants my job, and if I do anything, she's going to get enough experience to get my job. And so the answer was that I did leave his team. But it took me 3 years to figure out that's what was happening. My hope is that as you start to see these patterns, it won't take you won't have to pay the 3-year tax in your career to figure out that that's what's happening, and maybe figure out some other ways. I was still fairly young in my career, and I didn't have a lot of tools for how to navigate that a little bit better, and what else maybe could I have done. So I think working with a coach would have been a huge help at that time. But I didn't do that. So anybody wishes that you were given these two stories of kind of what a cooperation curse looks like and what a take charge tax looks like, anybody wishes they could switch sides, or did you change your mind about where you wish you were? Nobody wants the other side. Both are kind of crazy, right? So it's a catch-22 for us, for women and for other marginalized people. We're in this catch-22 around this cooperation curse or take charge tax. So it kind of doesn't matter which one you are. there's either a tax or a curse around it, right? There's some kind of price to pay for leaning into one of these strengths. So the catch-22 for us is that society expects that we're all, as women, highly cooperative, and we're good at taking direction from other people, and we're good at accommodating, and we're good at getting people on board with things, and that we're all very diplomatic. But in the workplace, leaders are the ones that take charge, and the ones that set direction, and the ones that set expectations, and the ones that communicate directly. So, okay, I did those things, but I was still met with, but she's not playing her gender norm. She's not playing, she's not being accommodating and waiting for her turn, right? Just like Robin did the things that society expects of her and was loved by everybody, and then had to pay the price by not getting any leadership opportunities. So this is kind of where we sit, right? We are in this middle of, all right, what do we do? What do we do? So what happens if you need to do both of these things? Because frankly, we all probably need to do a little bit of both of this depending on where we are. We either need to lean into being take charge so that we're not overlooked, that we can't make a decision, or we need to lean into being more cooperative so that we're not seen as violating our gender norms and we're seen as doing what we're supposed to be doing. I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, what does this feel like to you when you're in this place? I'm sure most of you have experienced maybe not exactly the stories, but I see some stuff going on in chat, so I know that there's something right going on. So what does it feel like when you are in this place of kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't? So I pulled some thoughts together too for us, right? Frustrated, feeling like you're not enough, feeling shame, feeling like you're a victim, feeling confused, being passive aggressive about things, being actively aggressive about things, feeling hopeless, feeling like giving up, feeling disposable. Ugh. So most of these words are either sort of victim energy or anger energy, right? We go into this place of really low energy that's kind of destructive energy. And so as a victim, it's really hard to feel like you can do anything. Like this is happening to me. I have no power in this. So I just have to take this abuse and there's nothing that I can really do. And so that is terrible. Nobody wants to feel like that. Or if you move up kind of an energetic chart, because I work with a tool that helps kind of define where you are kind of energetically too. If you move up the energetic chart, you get to anger. So stuff can get done when you're angry, when you're in that full-on rage place and you make things happen. But there's also a cost to getting things done that way. And you leave a wake when you try to get things done that way. And so what we'll try to do is give you some other tools other than, so one, recognizing this happens to most women, and it is a little bit of you're caught in the middle. So what you can do instead of be a victim or instead of be super angry is make a choice. And we're going to talk about some ways that we can do that. Here's another couple of lines for your chart, right? So we said you're either on the take charge side or the cooperative side. Society probably wants us all to be on the cooperative side. Corporate culture probably wants us all to be on the take charge side. Depends though on what you're, where you are. But in general, like corporate culture in general expects leaders to be more take charge. But what other expectations do we have? Because this doesn't seem to be enough, right? So your role has expectations too. So how much authority do you have in your role? Where are you on the org chart? Does your role complete tasks by yourself or through other people? Do you need to be, do you need to coordinate through other people? How much cooperation is required? How much handoff and diplomacy is required in the job that you have? Or do you have kind of a standalone do-it-yourself job? So when I think about kind of stereotypically high take charge jobs like a paramedic or a day trader, they have to make decisions right away. They can't go get a bunch of consensus and do a lot of like I have to make a decision about how I'm going to behave right now. So those tend to be, high take charge type jobs. But maybe as a facilitator or a mediator, I need to be more cooperative and I need to be looking out for that. Or as a synchronized swimmer, I can't just go off and make a decision to do things my own way. Or on a sports team, I can't just decide that I'm going to play soccer a different way today when you're expecting me to be in a certain position. So you can think about, what does your role in the organization require of you? And in reality, most roles are not all take charge or all cooperative. Most roles are some sort of blend of both of these things. It's there are probably a few roles where you can either be all one or all the other, but most of our jobs that require us to interact with humans probably require some sort of blend. So think about your job role. Does your job role require more cooperation or more take charge or some kind of blend of those two things? And then let's look at company culture. So not only your role, but then in the context of your organization, what traits does your company reward? Who gets promoted? What does that look like? How much do they value independent thinking and self-reliance versus crowdsourcing decisions and gathering consensus before everything gets done? Do your mission and vision statements lean more toward cooperation and team orientation, or do they lean more toward visionary and take charge? Do they actually live any of those values, or is that just a poster on the wall? And again, a Wall Street culture could be seen as very take charge. A nonprofit might be seen as more cooperative. Again, it's what does your culture like? What I didn't realize and what I didn't say earlier is in my story, I had come from a consulting role to this new organization where they hired me. And in consulting, it is all about billable hours and driving results. And so I got rewarded for being take charge and self-reliant in that world. It was a very high take charge type environment. It was a very kind of solo results driven environment in consulting. When I started at this organization, what I didn't know was that this culture was a very cooperative, collaborative culture. They really prided themselves on everybody getting a seat at the table, everybody getting a say so, and really being very collaborative and building consensus. And so not only was I a threat to my boss in his position, I was also being countercultural without even knowing it, because I just come from a culture where that was the best way that I could possibly be, was to drive to find a new way to solve a problem, drive to find ways that I could add more value and get better results. And then when I got to this culture, that was no longer rewarded. In fact, it was punished because I was stepping on too many toes, because I wasn't building enough consensus. So what do you think about your company culture? Does your company culture tend to be more on that cooperative side like mine was in my story, or does it tend to be more on that take charge side? Or is it hard to tell? Maybe it's a blend in your organization. Maybe your culture is not super strong enough for you to tell. So I would love for you to tell us in chat, as you kind of look at the chart that you've now filled out, how congruent are these? Does anybody have 4 check boxes in one column? I think you have to have either 4 or 3, right? We're trying to uncover these patterns because it's an incredibly difficult line for us to walk, right? As women, it's really hard to try to figure out, when should I be this? How should I be this? How should I be that? Because these expectations exist whether we want them to or not, and they exist in every job and they exist in every role. And we need to have the facility to choose how we're going to show up and how we can engage with other people to have them help us. So most of us need to do a little bit of both of this. And it's not just sexism that determines where we're supposed to sit. It is our role. It is our company culture. And I've talked a lot about the curse for women being too cooperative and the tax for women being to take charge, because I think that we probably pay more for for that than men do. But I also talked about behavioral patterns at the beginning, and I said that some of us tend toward more cooperation and some of us tend toward more take charge. But that goes for men too. So many of you in male dominated industries, it sounds like, and I'm really curious, and I would love to like just get a count of the take charges versus the cooperatives, because I'm wondering if take charge women tend to be drawn more toward male dominated industries. But there is just as many take charge women as there are take charge men, and there's just as many cooperative men as there are cooperative women. I think what happens with them though, and I don't have any evidence of this except for anecdotally, but I think that what happens with them is they get extra credit for being cooperative because look how empathetic they are and look how willing they are to get consensus from people. So instead of it being a curse, they get extra credit for going against the gender norm of being high take charge. Now, they probably pay a little bit on the, are they good enough leaders? Are they strong enough leaders? Unless they're really smart and they get a take charge woman to work with them and they take credit for her take chargedness and they're getting credit for their own cooperativeness. I don't know that that's really true, but we all have these patterns. So this isn't specific to women. We all have these patterns. Okay, Nikki, that was super depressing. Thanks for letting us know that we're stuck in this catch-22 and it sucks to be a woman and these expectations are all around us. So is that it? No, that is not it. Let's talk now about some things that we can do about this place. Like what are some things that we can do about this? So the first thing that you can do is just change society and corporate culture altogether. I'm just kidding. Do not do this. Do not do this. This is not a recommendation, right? Society and corporate culture are going to be extremely hard to change. Now, I'm not saying you can't play a part in it, but like unless that this is your life's passion to try to change how corporate culture works or to try to change societal expectations, please do not waste your time banging your head trying to hope that society is just going to change. If you're just a good enough woman in business that things will change around you, it's going to take an engaged group of people. If you want to be one of those people, fantastic. But starting a long-term movement is probably not a viable solution to your short-term goals. It's a tip. It's a way you could do it, but probably not my most recommended tip. The second one is probably a degree of difficulty less, but not without some difficulty, which is to change your role or to change your company. So again, for most people, their job is not that flexible, and or choosing to just up and leave their company is an endeavor, right? And how do you know that the culture that you're going to is any better than the culture that you're leaving? But you can start to look for roles where your take chargedness or your cooperativeness is appreciated. Kinds of roles where making decisions and being self-reliant is rewarded, or where gathering consensus and being group oriented is rewarded. You can look for company cultures that celebrate that side that you naturally gravitate toward. And you can have conversations with people to say, hey, I went to this event and I see this pattern now really clearly. And here's where I think I fall on it. And I think that sometimes when you see me as intimidating, what you're seeing is me wanting to make decisions and being really self-reliant and being pretty straightforward about the way I say things. And I understand that, you know, maybe I can tweak how that works a little bit, but that may be part of what you're seeing is this natural pattern that I have. And it's not something that I'm choosing, it's how my brain works. It's how my brain is wired. So I'm happy to have the conversation about that, but I think if you can let people know, I really enjoy when the whole project is handed over to me and I get to make the decisions and I get to, you know, just kind of be on my own and be pretty self-reliant in making things happen. Or I really enjoy gathering consensus and making sure that the whole group is doing what we needed to do and kind of finding harmony in the group and helping other people feel appreciated in the group. That those kinds of roles really light me up, and I would like to look for more opportunity in the organization for that. So some of it is, do you feel safe enough to have those conversations with your coworkers and with your leaders to let them know what you're looking for. If not, can you find another role in your organization or outside your organization that values the skills that you have or the tendencies that you have a little bit more, or can you find a company culture that's more like that? The third tip is actually, we're going to expand pretty high on this, and that's to flex your style. I'm going to give you a warning though with this tip. If you flex your style all the time, you're going to be exhausted all of the time and eventually burn out. My tip, fits on the line as flex your style, but the warning that goes with it is choose when. Think about what you're doing but think about that spectrum and think about, where on that spectrum or when, and we'll talk about how to flex your style coming up here. But how many of you have been exhausted in a role, even though it wasn't physically taxing? So think about those times when you feel exhausted, it's probably something that's requiring a big flex from you. And maybe you didn't even recognize it. Maybe you didn't even recognize what that was. I had a job as a project manager. I told you at the beginning of this call that my top 2 traits are spontaneous and creative. Those are not awesome traits for a project manager. They are not. And I was exhausted all the time. I was good at it because I was very results focused, but I was exhausted all the time. When I got promoted to manage project manager, so still in the project management field, it was great. It was like a whole new light lit up in me, because now somebody else was doing all of that detail and I was managing their exceptions, and I was great at that. And that was so much more fun. I didn't understand the difference. I didn't understand why this was bad and this was good until I could start to see these patterns. And that's my hope for you, is that you're starting to see these patterns. So I'm going to introduce you to this charisma scale from Vanessa Van Edwards. And this changed the way I thought about charisma, because you see charismatic people and you think, how do they get that way? And she broke down this formula of, if you think about charisma as a combination of high warmth and high competence. And I'm going to draw the line for you that high warmth is kind of like high cooperative, and high competence is kind of like high take charge. It's the blend of warmth and competence that makes us highly charismatic. So when we're highly warm but low on competence, or seen as low on competence, then we're not taken very seriously. People like us, but we're not taken very seriously. When we are high competence but low on warmth, like take charge, we're seen as know-it-alls, or maybe the B word that gets tossed around us a lot, but not very likable. If we are neither warmth nor competence, I don't know, does that mean we get fired? That's a bad place to be. Don't go there. But when we have both a combination of warmth and competence, we hit that charisma zone where we are both likable and competent. If you are high take charge, you want to dial up warmth. So how do I do that? There are several ways that you can do that. You can do that with the words that you use. So just the word choices that you use, you can start to use more warmth words. Words like connect and collaborate and together are highly warm words that help establish that feeling of working together. You can vocalize more. You can smile when you say hello. You can try this on your own, just pretending like you're picking up a phone. And if you pretend to pick up a phone and say hello, and then if you smile first, hello, you can hear a difference. Even if you're not looking at the person, you can hear a difference between when you smile and when you don't. Other people can hear that difference too, even if they're not looking at you. So thinking about smiling, when it's a genuine smile, when you can really genuinely do it. Varying your pitch and pace can be very warm. So I'm sure you work with a lot of engineers, and they can be very monotone and read the report and do the thing. And if you don't have any variation in the vocality, then people start to drift off and stop listening to what you're saying, because you're giving them a lot of really good information, but you're not changing your pitch or your pace. It's super boring to listen to, right? So you want to start varying that pitch and pace. And another thing that you can do vocally is start mirroring what other people around you. So if you're talking to people that are talking at a quick pace, you can speed your pace of speech up. Or if they're talking a little bit slower, you can slow your pace down and sort of match their pace a little bit, or match their volume a little bit. Other things that you can do, you can tilt your head to show that you're listening. Like that's just a warm indicator that you're listening. You can nod to keep people talking or to show that you're hearing what they're saying. You can raise your eyebrows. When we're excited about something or we're interested in something, a lot of times our eyebrows will go up. And then you can mirror physically. Now, I'm not suggesting that you do all of these things and become like a head tilting bobblehead. Like don't do that. Don't do that. But pick one. Pick if you're really interested in dialing up warmth, pick one of these things and an exchange that you typically find yourself feeling too intimidating in or to take charge in, and just try one of these things. See if maybe tilting your head when someone's talking, or slowing your pace down a little bit or speeding your pace up a little bit changes the response that you're getting. Like it's not jazz hands. It's not like, don't try to do all of this at once. Just try to remember one thing that you think would be easy for you to do and try that. So what if you're high cooperative? Then you want to dial up competence, right? We talked about how Robin wasn't taken seriously. So what do you do to dial up competence and be taken more seriously? So you can, again, with words, use more highly competent words. Brainstorming, effective, productive, expert, knowledge, percentage, words like that express competence. You can use those. You can lower your tone a bit. People that are high competent tend to have a lower tone. They tend to use more pausing. So you may pause a little bit more. They have that you can work on volume control. Sometimes people that are high cooperative or that are nervous in a situation will tend to speak more quietly. And so you want to be able to project your voice, project your volume and project your voice. Sometimes you use the question inflection so that when you're actually making statements, they sound like questions. And so don't do that, right? Highly competent people don't use the question inflection. So you want to do that. Again, some body language things you can do to raise your confidence, power poses like the Amy Cuddy talk, being bigger in the room can help. I don't recommend that you do this in a meeting. I do not recommend that you walk into a meeting like this or like this. But I do recommend that if you're feeling intimidated going into a meeting, that you maybe find a quiet place or a place like a bathroom that you can do that for a couple of minutes and just start to feel more confident. But don't do that, right? In the meeting, steepling your hands. This is a competence body language gesture. Using explanatory gestures with your hands, showing your palms can be very highly competent. The other thing that I also found fascinating, and all of this is from research that Vanessa Van Edwards did, is the distance between the bottom of your earlobe and the top of your shoulder, right? So it's not about sitting up ramrod straight, but the more distance you have. So when I do this, if I had done my entire presentation like this, I would come off as a lot less competent about what I'm talking about. My words are the same, but I look like I feel super uncomfortable right now and maybe a little bit intimidated or super cold. But just by lowering my shoulders, like you could hear a change in my voice because that does constrict your voice. So just thinking about, it's not about sitting ramrod straight, it's about keeping your shoulders down and relaxed so that you have this space so that you're not turtling up and trying to cover this area, right? It's a biological thing to, like when we're feeling nervous, to try to cover up. So if you can keep your shoulders down. The other thing is you can also do it with the distance between your torso and your arms. So you can't see my torso right now, but you can see here that I've got, just even the small amount of zoom window that you can see from me, if you've got your arms pinned to you versus putting my arms on the armrest, it just looks different. You look more relaxed, and so you look more comfortable, and so you look more competent. So those are just a couple of things that you can do for my high take charge people. I'm not suggesting if you're high take charge that you instead walk into meetings like this so you look less competent. Those body language things I would say do anyway. Like that, keeping your shoulders down, keeping some space, it makes you look relaxed. Just a couple of things, that you can do. And yes, as you're listening, that can happen. Like, especially like if you lean in to listen, then you see what happened to my shoulders because I leaned in to listen. That's okay. When you go to respond, sit back and put your shoulders down. So anybody see these lists of what I'm saying for high competence and high warmth as gendered? It feels this way because society is pretty prescriptive about what men and women are supposed to be like. So if you see that this list has some gender norms in it, it's because these lines are lined up with some societal expectations. But it's not that men can't be highly warm and not very competent, or the other way around. This does kind of reflect some of these things. We do tend to assign high competence to men and high warmth to women. But what I will say is that when people meet me, and I've done this, and I would encourage you to try this if you're up for it. I have met people at things like this. So at the next chat thing, the next time you're in one of those rooms with people that don't know you very well, when you get done with your 5 minutes or 10-minute impression, ask them, can you describe me in 3 words? Based on our very small interaction together, can you describe me in 3 words? Most people describe me with words that are high competence words because that's how I'm wired, because that's how I show up. So even if the gendered expectation is that I am more warm, I have to actually work on dialing up warmth. I have to be more intentional about that because most people, when they come across me, see me as more competent, as higher competent. And I think that that's true. It can be true that the way we're seen is opposite of what a gender norm is. So in my case, warmth does not come easily to me. I have to dial that up. I have to be really intentional about that. So even in very short exchanges, you can kind of think about how does that show up, and ask people, like, if you could describe me. I know this is kind of weird, but I watched this talk and she gave us this assignment. So can you describe me in 3 words based on our really short exchange? People will do it because you've asked them to do it, and it's a little bit quirky. C, do the words that come back, are they warmth words? Are they describing high warmth, or are they describing high competence? So given some of these tips and some of these things, is there something that you can see from what I've given you here today? What's one thing that you can do today, tomorrow, to either make a flex or to feel more congruent with your style and sort of the expectations of you? It's hard to get this blend right. It's important to try to match your style to the moment. What is the moment requiring? Does it require you to step up and be more take charge? Does it require a little bit more cooperation? Do the people in your company, in your job, in your role, in your corporate culture, what are their expectations? If your natural style runs countercultural to societal's expectations, then you probably always run into this a little bit. But if you're working in a male-dominated industry and you're highly cooperative, then you run into it too. To get the blend right, I would say what's required in the moment. Being intentional, like now that you see this pattern and you understand, okay, I can either lean toward cooperative or I can lean into my take charge. I can dial up warmth or I can dial up competence. Getting that blend right now is a choice a little bit. So here's the thing. Not everybody's going to like you all of the time. You're not going to get this right all the time. And when you make an intentional choice, not everybody's going to like you. And if they do, then maybe you're not being bold enough. Maybe you're not being enough that you're going to get recognized. The goal isn't to get everybody to like you all the time. The goal is about seeing the pattern and being empowered to make a choice for yourself and how you show up. Our greatest power is the power to choose. And so my hope is that I have given you a view into this pattern that you might not have seen this way before, or that you might not have had kind of language and tools around before. So you've seen the results of this pattern before, but have you actually seen that maybe this is part of what's driving the pattern? And I hope that you leave feeling empowered to make choices about how to take action and to choose how you want to show up, and if and when and how you might choose to flex or lean into your natural patterns. It is a choice. So if you're interested in understanding exactly where you fall, like getting your actual score, exactly where do I fall on this? How hard is it for me to flex? Not just the take charge and cooperative traits, but all of those other traits that I mentioned at the beginning of the program. Where am I on planned and spontaneous or on risk taking? If you're interested in learning more about your own scores and how those patterns interact with one another, because that's the thing, we're not just take charge and cooperative. We are a blend of a lot of things. And so if you're interested in understanding what your particular patterns are, or if you're interested in having me bring these patterns to your whole group so that everybody can start to understand them, so that you get this baseline language that you can all use together, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me an email, go to my website, let me know that you saw me here at the WIMD Talk, and I have a special offer just for you. And I would love to have a conversation with you and talk about how I can help you understand what these patterns are for yourself, what your actual scores are, and how we might bring this to your team or your organization. I have had so much fun tonight explaining some of this to you. So if you have questions, I am delighted to answer your questions now. Thank you.